And welcome everyone. I wish everyone a happy holiday season, and we're so glad that you're here. This is the Assembly for the Arts. We are the Arts Council for the Greater Cleveland region. My name is Jeremy Johnson. I'm President and CEO. We are here to advocate for and to represent the entire creative sector across Greater Cleveland. And this today is a day where we report back to you, where we share with you and give you some highlights of what's happening across our region, especially as it relates to the arts industry. But before we get started, I have some special things I need to say. And one is that we always start with a land acknowledgement, recognizing the land that we reside on, and we express our gratitude and appreciation to those who have lived and worked here before us. And we actually say their names. This is the traditional homeland of the Lenape, Delaware, Shawnee, Wyandot, Miami, Ottawa, Potawatomi, and other Great Lakes tribes, Chippewa, Kickapoo, Pinnacock, and Kakashkia. We also acknowledge the thousands of Native Americans who call Northeast Ohio home now. The Greater Cleveland area occupies land officially ceded by 1,100 chiefs and warriors, signing the Treaty of Greenville in 1795. You should also know that there will be live transcription on this Zoom, and that will be enabled for those who will follow along reading this. I always like to talk about Assembly in terms of our two mission points: expanding the pie, that's expanding the pie of resources available to our industry, public and private, money and other types of resources. And secondly, increasing the equity within our industry across Northeast Ohio. And it's also important to understand that Assembly, as an arts council, there are a number of groups that are working to advance arts and culture in our region. And we are joined at the hip with a government agency known as Cuyahoga Arts and Culture. It is chartered by the state of Ohio, as you all know, and it actually collects a tax that is on cigarettes, and it then distributes those dollars across our industry. We're happy to have the executive director of Cuyahoga Arts and Culture here today, Jill Paulson. So we're joined at the hip and we're in alignment working together. Assembly for the Arts is a nonprofit. Cuyahoga Arts and Culture, of course, is a public agency, and we are working together. So I would like to acknowledge any of the Assembly board members who are here. There are 27 board members of Assembly for the Arts, our 501c3. I also want to acknowledge and thank our Assembly for the Arts staff. Thank you, especially Valerie, who's helping to navigate and engineer today, but the rest of the staff as well. And a special note to our newest staff member is Deirdre McPherson, who is our Chief Community Officer. And if I guess we could share in the chat at some point an announcement that went out publicly this morning on cleveland.com. Welcome on board, Deirdre McPherson. We're thrilled to have you. And of course, if there are Cuyahoga Arts and Culture family, if there are board members and staff members here, I did mention Jill Paulson, who is here on the call with us, Executive Director of Cuyahoga Arts and Culture. At the top of this meeting, I really want to just acknowledge many of you may be here because you heard that we're going to have a special guest, Boris Oicherman, who's the Program Director for Arts and Culture. He is new to that position, and I want to say a few things about him. Hold on, I'm going to make sure that I introduce him as he should be introduced. Boris Oicherman, PhD, joined the Cleveland Foundation on September 19. He comes to Cleveland from the Weissman Art Museum, the University of Minnesota Twin Cities, where he was the inaugural Cindy and Jay Eilenfeld Curator for Creative Collaboration. In his role at the Weissman, Oicherman established and led a new program that supports collaborative practices in the arts. He pioneered innovative curatorial practices that prioritize inclusion, access, and the long-term transformative potential of art. Over the course of his 5 tenure there, he spearheaded a strategic direction in support of culturally diverse initiatives that transcend disciplines, media, and sectors while combining visual arts, academic research, crafts, activism, indigenous knowledge, music, creative writing, and performance, combined with an intentional, a focused outreach to artists working in and with communities underserved by the museum and investment in long-term relationship building. His strategy resulted in uniquely inclusive, sustainable, and community-engaged museum programming. I will share with you all that I've had an opportunity to meet and to see Boris in and around our wonderful Greater Cleveland community. He's become omnipresent at so many of the great arts and cultural things that are happening here. We're thrilled to have him here to introduce himself and his new role at the Cleveland Foundation to those of you who are on this call. And I know there are at least 70 folks who had signed up, and I don't know how many we have on now, but welcome, Boris. We are thrilled to have you here. And I'm going to turn it over to you, if that's okay, Valerie. I'm going to turn it over to Boris, and I hope that we will be able to hear.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me okay? Hello, great to be here. Thank you for having me. That picture always makes me laugh because me and Katya, my partner, took it as a joke, and I'm trying very hard to look serious. when the Cleveland Foundation asked for a headshot, this is the only thing I could give them, and they just keep using it. So anyway, good to be here. So I moved here about a couple of months ago. I'm new to town. I'm new to philanthropy. And kind of being new to things, I guess, is what I specialize in. I was once an engineer, and then I became an artist. In a very kind of niche field of art. I was doing extremely site-specific projects. It's when, like, there is one end of spectrum of site specificity where there is, say, Richard Serra. You see huge steel plate, you know it's Richard Serra, even if it's adapted to the particular place. And the other spectrum of that says, I don't even want to think about what I'm going to do before I see the place. So I was on that extreme spectrum. So I was doing that for a while, and part successfully, part not really, because I realized that a lot of institutions have no idea how to support such artistic practices, even though they exist since the 60s, pretty much, in the Western art, and existed forever in other cultures. So I moved to the United States 7 years ago, and I did my MFA after I had a career already. I'm kind of doing things backwards. And then I took a job at the Weizmann Art Museum as their curator for creative collaboration, which is not really a position that exists anywhere. They came up with it. And the goal was broadly defined. They wanted to see University Art Museum. The museum belongs to the University of Minnesota, which is, I think, third in size in the country. It's a very big university and kind of medium-sized museum. They wanted to see a program in the museum that supports artists collaborating with scholars. And beyond this very broad definition, there wasn't really much content. And I took kind of the approach of site-specific art. I asked, okay, if the whole university now is my site, what am I going to do with it? And collaboration kind of comes naturally into site-specific practices. If you come to a place, people live in that place, you need to learn the community, you need to talk to the community, work with the community. If you need to build something you don't know how to, you work with people who know how to build things. So collaboration becomes integral to site specificity, and in the context of artists collaborating with scholars, that kind of theoretical and art historical background was very helpful. And I also acknowledged that I'm new to Minneapolis. I have no idea what people are interested in, how they live, but I knew that artists do. artists who live in town know all of these things because this is what they do in their lives. So this approach of trusting the artist became really the core of the curatorial approach. I would just meet artists for coffees, and I met hundreds of people in my first year and probably about the same amount in the second year. And the only thing I said, come to me with an idea that has a potential to become a long-term collaboration and that can have a transformative impact on town, on university, on whatever issue you're working with, on the community, or on the field of knowledge, for that matter. Come to me with an idea and we figure it out. So I developed a whole system of incubating these ideas into bigger projects. And over 5 years, some projects grew from $5,000 of initial grant to $250,000 research project that involves the whole university. And when I saw, sorry, before kind of my Cleveland stage, what I discovered was actually very similar to my experience as an artist. As an artist, I have difficulty explaining to museums and curators, what is it that I want to do? What does it mean I'll come and figure it out? What does it mean I want to learn before I decide what to do? Curators want to see project, an outcome, a goal, an exhibition. Most of them, at least, not all of them. So when I saw the opportunity to become a curator, I thought, okay, what if I become that curator who will see crazy ideas that don't make sense and says, tell me more. While doing that for 5 years, I realized that I have kind of the same problem, but on a much bigger scale. Now I have to explain artists' ideas to the funders. And I have to get funders on board with artists' crazy ideas and with my crazy idea of having emergent processes running in multi-billion-dollar university. When I saw the opportunity to become the program director for arts and culture, I thought, okay, maybe I can be that guy on the other end of grant making to figure it out from that end. How grant makers can support this emergent processes and research-based processes, collaborative processes, and support artists who are doing this work, even though artists maybe in the beginning of their projects cannot really explain and put a finger what the result will be. And I was lucky as hell to get hired. So here I am. And I'm starting my my work here pretty much in the same way as I did in Minneapolis. I'm meeting everybody who wants to meet me. So before we go to everything else, I just want to offer a coffee to anyone who wants to meet me. And we'll have a conversation. I'd love to learn what people, artists are busy with in Cleveland and how we can support it. So a little bit about how I'm starting this work, with what vision or kind of principles. And then I want to also leave room for questions. And I have to apologize in advance. I have another meeting at past and I will have to switch. So in 12 minutes. So I'm starting with this value that artists are a foundation of arts and culture. Museums and orchestra will not have anything to do if artists were not doing their art. So we should, even though Cleveland Foundation does not do direct grants to artists, we need to think about supporting artists when we do our grants to organizations, which pretty much says that we need to see the whole thing as an ecosystem. Because artists, organizations, museum, orchestra, they all very much connected. So when we think about structures of support for art, we need to think about how do we support the entire ecosystem. Because, as I said, we need to support the artists. Without that, nothing happens. But we also need to support the museums, because without that, artists will not have places to show. So how do you think about this whole thing in one go? This is where I begin. Ask me in a year and I'll probably can fill some details in that. I don't know, why don't I just open it for questions. I'll be happy to answer anything. And what we don't have time to, again, send me an email. I'll put it in the chat, and we'll get coffee.
It looks like we had something in the chat from, I don't know.
Sean Watterson.
Yeah, go ahead and, Sean, do you want to jump in? Do you consider
Sure.
art? Oh, you go ahead.
Sure.
Yeah.
Welcome, Boris. Welcome to Cleveland. Love Minneapolis. Love what you were able to do there, and look forward to what you bring to town here. Everybody on this call probably isn't surprised by me putting a question in there about the for-profit arts, the live music venues, the art galleries, the record stores, the actual independent artists themselves who are sole proprietor businesses. When you think of an arts ecosystem, you mentioned the museums and the orchestras. I understand the foundation's limits on who they can give money to, but when you think about what the arts ecosystem is, do you count that in your understanding of the ecosystem? And when you're looking at interventions, do you consider those parts of the ecosystem, or the effects interventions a foundation would have might have on those parts of the ecosystem?
Absolutely, and you'd be surprised, but you are on my list to reach out and ask for a coffee. Precisely for that reason. My background is visual arts, and this is what I kind of intuitively have a feel of, and know where to go. Not so with music and music venues. The difference in my position now from what I did in the museum is that I am working with the entire field of culture. So it's visual arts, but it's also music, and music is an extremely diverse field. So there is symphonic orchestra and Cleveland Orchestra, but then there is small venues, and there is kids in the neighborhood who do hip hop and want to record that and tour that too. And it all exists on different levels and different structures, economic structures. So thinking about all that, and then there's libraries, and again, it's a hugely diverse and rich field. So to answer your question, absolutely yes. I need to learn that, and I need to learn what we can support. And to comment on what you said, there is no limit to who the foundation can give money to. In principle, and there are different ways of supporting organizations too. Some of them have to do with money, and money is also, it can come in form of grants, but it come in form of very special loans. And my colleague, Keisha Gonzalez, deals with that, with the impact investment, how money can be invested in by the foundation in things that have significance locally. But then there are other ways to support small businesses and small organizations too, which are maybe not monetary in terms of connection, in terms of networking. So I want to understand for every field how things work and how this whole thing works as a system too. So yeah, I'm looking forward to having a coffee with you too.
Maybe even a hot dog.
And I was in your place, by the way, a couple of weeks back.
Great. Thank you.
I'm going to jump in. Boris, in a similar way, you talked about the for-profit industry as being part of this. At Assembly, we really see this as a three-legged stool, the ecosystem. Nonprofits, who many of us are familiar with, the for-profit that Sean Watterson referred to, and then there is also individual artists, which is a key part of this. Can you talk about how what your thinking is about how the foundation will approach the concerns, the needs, and really the empowerment of the individual artist community?
Absolutely. And this is an extremely diverse field, because there are diverse artists who do diverse things. So there are artist projects, right? I want to sit in a studio and I want to create a body of work. That work needs to be supported and funded. And there are, on the other spectrum, system changing artists who say, I want to be embedded in Cleveland Clinic. I don't know, I'm just off the top of my head, something random and big. I want to work with this huge organization and figure it out, and I want to make it better through my art. Or I believe in this community and I want to set up a project that does something meaningful in the community. And we want to be able to support all of this spectrum. Where I find myself most useful is that bigger part of the spectrum. Artists who work with systems, artists who want to make systemic change and have long-term vision of how to address it and how to do it. The other spectrum of supporting artistic projects, me personally, and the foundation, the scale of work the foundation is doing, I think it's less relevant to the foundation directly, but we want to support organizations who support that work, like Assembly, like Spaces, like other organizations in town who work directly with artists. But my personal work will probably be more focused on systemic work and artists who deal with systemic changes and who want to initiate projects, who want to, I don't know, I'm trying to think about examples, and I'm thinking Walter Patton, who is doing the Gather Therapy project, which is a potentially very big project that can grow and impact a lot of people and also a lot of neighborhoods if it's replicated as a model, which is another kind of word that it's important for me. I'm looking for models. I'm not looking for just projects. I'm looking for ideas that can be grown, that can be replicated, that can be publicized as models that can be done in different places. So when we talk a lot about projects like Theaster Gates or Rick Law, Project Row Houses, when they famous, but what about those projects when they just starting? And how do we identify the next Rick Law or Theaster Gates who's trying to do things and what they suggest doesn't make any sense? Like, you should imagine the situation of a Potter, Theaster Gates, coming to a foundation and saying, I want to create an art museum that is based in community. Can sound as outrageous, but this is precisely the ideas that we want to look for.
Any other questions that we have for Boris while he's here? Boris, you are an artist yourself. Did you speak about that? That how you are an artist, or are you still an artist? Do you consider yourself an artist?
Depends who you ask, I guess. I heard this phrase, artist moonlighting as an art administrator. So that's probably me. Following the logic, and I can talk about theory of that forever, but following the logic of site specificity and systems art, art as a relationship. There is a famous paper from '67 by Jack Burnham, Systems Aesthetics. Kind of following that logic, the site can be pretty much anything. The site is any place or any system where you can build relationships. So I do see my trajectory of my career as the size and the scope of my site constantly expanding. First, it was just corner of the street and a gallery, and then it was a museum and the university, and now it's a city. So if you ask me, I do believe I am still an artist, and this is my work now as an artist. Other people might not agree.
There's a question in chat. I'll just verbalize it from Sophia Dooley, the Center for Art-Inspired Learning. You talked about systems and artists working within the arts education system.
Arts education is a hugely important part of art system, like maybe the foundational part of art system. This is where artists are coming from, right? So if we're talking about artists who are doing all the work, these artists learn somewhere and they come out of certain environments, and this is the arts education. It's very important to me, and I have my grievances about art education that have to do mostly with the fact that I believe that, at least in the West, Art education failed to educate about the kind of art that changes system. The art education didn't change much in the 20th century, in the beginning of 21st century. It's still about skills, it's still about objects, and all these things are extremely important, like, don't get me wrong, but they exist in a context of artistic thought that is about systemic change. And that part kind of didn't make it to arts education. Kids don't really learn about Theaster Gates as a system changer, right? First time they hear about art. And that affects a lot in the art system. So I would love to think about art education as an integral part of it, and especially how do you inject all those ideas in art education, early art education, graduate art education at all levels. And I have a meeting with all of my bosses that I cannot really be late to. So I'm really sorry I have to jump off.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all so much. My email is in the chat and I'm easy to find. It's on the website too. I'll be happy to hear from all of you and grab coffees.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
All right, we're going to continue our Zoom. And thank you, Valerie, for putting on the screen really several of the topics that we general broad topics we cover at each of our assemblies. And you'll see they go from fiscal sponsorship and on down. So let's talk about networking and promotion. I may actually ask Valerie Schumacher to chime in. A number of things around networking and promotion. I always encourage folks to visit clevelandartsevents.com. That is a site that's Cuyahoga Arts and Culture has created. Assembly's looking forward to working with them as we look at consolidated websites around our art sites. Also this summer, we at Assembly were part of a Summer of the Arts campaign that was engineered and led by Destination Cleveland and other partners. You have some great statistics. People are definitely watching what's happening in Cleveland, tourists, others coming to partake of our arts and culture. I love those, the sense of increased website activity and social media activity. Also, we are in the very nascent stage, the beginning stage of membership for Assembly. And by membership, I really mean a way to have all of us buy in to Cleveland as a great region for arts and a great region for equity. Yes, there's a way to financially support it, but it's really about a movement. It's not about, give X dollars and get a tote bag, although that may be coming, but it's not about the tote bag. It's about how are we unifying ourselves to be part of a movement that elevates all elements of the arts. You're going to be hearing about more of that, but I'm thrilled that people are already signed on as buy-ins to buy into this movement of Cleveland as a great city of arts, but art that's across the board that we've talked about, individual artists, nonprofits, and for-profits. So thank you for sharing that. Now for something that's really important, advocacy. If there's one thing that we are doing at Assembly, it's advocating for each and every one of you. I'm not going to go through the details here, but I'm just going to talk about money. Yes, putting money in the hands of artists and creatives is really important to the vibrancy of our community, of the industry. And we did that with these ARPA dollars. ARPA, of course, stands for American Rescue Plan Act. The artists in this room and throughout our region advocated last year. We wrote postcards and we're advocating on multiple government levels. This is what you need to know. ARPA dollars are federal stimulus dollars that are coming to our region by the hundreds of millions of dollars. $500 million to the city of Cleveland, $250 million to the county of Cuyahoga. And yes, because of your advocacy, our work at Assembly, we are getting a slice of that pie, COVID relief for creatives. So let me sum it up. There's I'll start with the city of Cleveland. We advocated so much. We're so thrilled that our City of Cleveland leaders have approved $3 million in ARPA funds for a transformative public arts fund. The details of how that will roll out will be coming next year, but the dollars have been approved by both City Council and the Mayor's office. And there's more ARPA dollars for arts in the pipeline, according to our sources at City Hall. Please stay connected to us so we can advocate for arts dollars that will support our arts communities. An Arts Point person is slated to be named in City Hall. We've been talking about this and advocating for this for a long time. So we're continuing to be working with the city and nudging them in that direction. And they've been very intentional in saying this is going to be happening in the next year, 2023. So always thank you. We cannot say thank you enough to our government leaders as they're doing this. Now let me get to Cuyahoga County. Cuyahoga County really jumped the gun, and they committed dollars even earlier than we could have anticipated. Literally right now, as I speak, Assembly is completing distribution of $1.5 million to artists and businesses for those who were impacted by COVID. For those of you who have received your notice, please follow the instructions in your emails to make sure that those dollar transfers are happening. This is so important to relieve those artists affected by COVID and get artists back on their feet to generate dollars for our economy, but also just to lift up arts and our arts and cultural businesses for our economy. Again, big thanks. Thanks to our outgoing county executive, Armin Budish, and to the Cuyahoga County Council. If any of you are connected to those folks, please, it's so important that we let them know that those dollars are important to this industry. Of course, we have a new county executive, Chris Ronayne, and he has pledged to us that he will be an arts champion. We're looking forward to working with him. Perhaps we might have him on one of these future Zooms. At the state of Ohio level, and remember I said earlier that Cuyahoga Arts and Culture is chartered by the state, and there are other dollars that come to this region by the state. Assembly is working both with Ohio Arts Council, and we're working with our own lobbyists in Columbus to assure that the dollars are expanded to support our industry. And this is going to be very important as we enter the year 2023. And we can move to the next.
Quick question. We had an important question about the City of Cleveland ARPA from Sean Watterson. So in terms of the $3 million for the Transformative Public Arts project, Jeremy, can you just talk a little bit about Assembly's involvement in that project?
Yeah, I see the question. Thank you.
Yeah.
Is it true that the city will be creating a programming committee to review proposed uses of the $3 billion in ARPA dollars? My understanding is that the city must appoint, let me scroll down, must appoint people to this committee before the end of the year. Is Assembly involved in making recommendations for members of this committee? And if so, will there be a process to advance? I got to keep scrolling. Will there be a process? Now I'm losing because I'm scrolling. To advance names to represent all aspects of the arts and diverse representation of City of Cleveland artists and residents. And then the question goes on. While I understand the initial focus is on murals and the visual arts, I am hopeful that a musician's perspective, I would expect Sean to say that, can be represented on this panel, that music can be considered as an eligible art form for the city's ARPA dollars. The same goes for other art forms. Let me just pause and say, Mr. Watterson, to all of our folks on this call, absolutely. We are Assembly, we are an advocate group, and we are advocating with the city planners that there be full representation. Part of what has been publicly announced by the city as that a commission will be created to oversee an RFP process for the $3 million, and we will strongly advocate for full representation, especially and including our great music industry. I'm seeing a signal. I hope you can still hear me because I'm getting a note that
Yeah.
my internet. Sean, yes,
Yeah.
and I will share more
Jeremy,
as it becomes more publicly available.
I appreciate that, Jeremy. Just a question, I guess, for the benefit of the rest of the folks on this group. If they have names of City of Cleveland residents that they feel would be useful contributors on that commission, should they be sending them to Assembly? And what timeline for getting those names to Assembly if the appointments need to be made, I think by December 26th?
That's a very good and a fair question. I would encourage folks to send those recommendations directly to Joyce Wang, who is the Director of Planning. You can copy Assembly. You can copy us at jeremy@assemblycle.org. Joyce Wang is really taking a leadership role in these ARPA dollars. And so I would share that with her directly. Of course, we will be advocates as well. So that's what I would recommend. Sharing those names with Joyce Wang, Huang, the Director of Planning for the City of Cleveland. I see some new messages have come in. Oh. Can you help me with those? Did I read them all? Will the additional ARPA dollars in the pipeline be more geared toward arts nonprofits or programs / education? The description for the 3 million approved to date seems more about capital and arts installation. If I was interpreting, all right, I'm just having some challenges. Yes, it is. That's a fair question. So the $3 million that has been approved, it is for a public arts fund, innovate. But it's been shared with me that don't think of this only as capital. It's even what are the wraparounds for public art? That can be programming, that can be music, that can be digital. I think the Director of Planning is thinking very holistically around this public arts, transformative public arts fund. So I would not, from what I'm understanding from the planning director, it's not only dollars that for a physical piece, but it's all that's wrapped into how do we create vibrant, creative placemaking, creative placekeeping. That's my understanding.
And you've also mentioned, Jeremy, that this is like a sort of an initial wave or
This is the first docket that's been approved, and the second docket for ARPA dollars is being formulated on the city side. And let me be very clear to everyone on this call. This is really a new high mark for the city of Cleveland to prioritize the arts, the creative industry in this way. It hasn't been this way with this level of investment and in recent memory. So I think it's a tribute to those who have been very, very vocal and very involved in the democratic system, and us really letting our leaders in the city hall know that we are here and we are an important part of the sector. All right, I think we're ready for the next screen because I do want to leave time at the end. I just want to make mention of something called Arts and Economic Prosperity 6. Very long title. We shorten it to AEP 6. It stands for a big national survey that Cleveland is participating in. This big national survey of, yes, it's nonprofits. So I understand it's imperfect because it's only doing the nonprofits, and we're going to work on changing that in the future. But it's still a very important survey for us to participate in. So Assembly for the Arts is partnering with this survey, and it's coming out of a group called Americans for the Arts. And you all have seen the emails and the posts where we've invited all of our nonprofit partners, theaters, music companies, any place where there are people that are showing up and spending money to be there, we want to measure that. And especially, obviously, we can think of our traditional places that we think of, our Great Playhouse Square and our museums and our orchestras, but many other places. And we want to make sure that we're there serving, and that information is going to come back to Cleveland. And that's by next summer, the late spring, we will have the economic impact from those surveys to really show to our elected leaders the dollars that are generated, whether at our large institutions, small institutions, traditional institutions, BIPOC institutions. That's going to be a special focus as well. So please participate when you can. A fellow from that group, his name is Randy Cohen. He's with Americans for the Arts. He's going to be visiting our city next week, and we're going to really be trying to get him to see as many of you as possible. If you get invited, if you are invited, we're doing a Zoom. So watch your emails about the Zoom with Randy Cohen, who will talk about this every 5-year survey and how this is going to benefit Cleveland, so we can advocate with all of our elected officials and others so that there's more dollars invested. So we are looking for volunteers and with stipends connected to the volunteers. So if you're interested in that, please look to our website for information. This slide is just more information about the $1.5 million. For this, the median business amount was $5,000. The median artist was just over 2,200. And we want to do more of this, and we can keep the slides moving. I love this heat map. You're going to see this in our publications. These red dots on this map across Cuyahoga County and the black dots as well. The red dots show individual artists that have received ARPA disbursements. The black dots show businesses that have received ARPA disbursements. And you can see there across the county, we did special outreach, as you all know, thanks to places like Larchmere Arts, like the Julio de Burgos Center, like Glen Village, where we literally were in person to say, please, this is information that's valuable. And we're really happy to see so many parts of our county participate and access these stimulus dollars for creatives who are working in the arts and culture field. I may turn this over to Valerie to do this page about, or Meg Matko, our Director of Community Relationships. Do you want to just talk through these slides of field support?
Sure, I can do that. Yes, so we are in the stages of planning for programs coming in 2023. We had a really wonderful conversation with Lisa Skolny from WAGE, Working Artists in the Greater Economy. That conversation spurred another discussion with Vince Robinson, our board member, and the Artist Bridge Coalition. So she looks like coming back to Cleveland. So that's great news. ARPA, of course, which Jeremy just went over, has been a great boon for a lot of creatives in the region. Arts Leadership Residency is halfway through, and Valerie, I know, can speak a little bit more to that. And yes, 2023 program content. We're looking at new things for our workbench sessions, another type of support model for creatives or emerging creatives with other organizations in the county. And we've got a lot of other things on the horizon in terms of direct support for creative folks, businesses, and nonprofits coming up. So we're excited.
Jeremy, you want me to
Excellent.
jump on this one too, or you want to jump back in?
And next, go for it. Valerie Schumacher, go for it.
Okay. With racial equity being one of our primary goals, this is something that flows through everything we do. But we're talking specifically about, every program, we have this question of, is this an equitable program? Both racial equity and accessibility for people with disabilities are the two major ones. LGBTQ is also another one that's really close to our hearts. So for the ARPA sessions, we did a lot of targeted outreach with Veronica Thornton on making sure that this information got to people who may not have, a digital footprint or are in, not connected to the existing networks. We're continuing dialogue among the Front Futures Forum, and I think Deidre's got some real passion around here. So Deidre, feel welcome to jump in if you'd like on that.
Yes, so for the Front Art Futures Forum, I was part of Front staff, and we wanted to have discussion that brought our community together to talk about equity in the arts. And it was important because, you know, Front's theme was around art as a form of healing and transformation. And it would have been a missed opportunity if we didn't come together to actually talk and learn from artists who are in our community and doing transformative projects. So we had a day of dialogue. The first half of the day was led by the executive directors of some of our largest visual arts institutions. So the Cleveland Institute of Art, the Cleveland Museum of Art, MoCA Cleveland, and I'm missing someone. It wasn't Spaces. Well, Jennifer Coleman from the Gun Foundation was our moderator. So we had a very powerful discussion where each of the institutions that are participating in Front, Akron Art Museum, thank you, talked about some of the initiatives and progress they've made in working towards equity within their organizations. And then the second half of the day was, we brought together 4 leaders in our community who are doing transformative projects. So Walter Patton, Create Art, Not Violence, is doing transformative work in the central community, one of the highest poverty parts of our city. Antoine Washington, visual artist, Museum of Creative Human Art, and he's been creating art opportunities to showcase Black and Brown artists throughout our city, most notably at MoCA Cleveland, where he had a residency. And that was the first solo exhibition that many artists in our city had as a result of his collaboration with MoCA Cleveland. So again, transformative work. Another person who's on that panel was, my brain is fried this morning, thinking about, well, all of our panelists were extremely inspiring and ones that I had a great relationship with and wanted to use our Front Art Futures Forum platform to talk about. So we'll be continuing those dialogues, and you'll hear more from them as well as other leaders who are doing work to really transform our communities and bring arts to underserved parts of our city.
Thanks, Deidre. Yeah, so exciting to keep that going. And I wasn't able to make it because we had so many things going on that day. So so I'm excited to be a part of it moving forward. I know we're getting about 10 minutes. We want to have some time for questions and thoughts, but board and staff representation is an ongoing conversation that we have. All of this relates back to the data. We have CV suite data that shows, you know, by industry and by occupation, sort of the demographics of different industries. And I don't think we have that listed publicly, but it is very clear. The data shows that that the overall industry picture is not aligned with the county demographics, to put it as diplomatically as possible. And then we'll continue community conversations in addition to the work to continue those specific dialogues, but just ongoing conversations about this work. So we have about 10 more minutes left. As we jump into the next season, we don't have next year's assemblies on the docket, but you can imagine we'll have another quarterly calendar set up for these sort of continued feedback loops. And we're also thinking about programming. So I want to open it up to see what are your thoughts on the work that has been done, either that we presented today or in any of the past assemblies from 2022, or if you have anything, where are you at now? What do you need help with now? What are things that Assembly should really be looking at holistically? Because we have that opportunity to look at sort of the you know, as the theme is today, the economy, the ecosystem of the arts.
I'm looking,
Valerie-
yeah, I'm just looking at the chat. There's some comments there.
Well, I like to say, Valerie, I think you're right on point on all the different programs. I have a meeting with Boris, and actually, I have the ecosystem where he's talking about transformation changes. So after I have a meeting with him, I basically like to address the group of artists and panel, because I think I have the next transformation that will take Great Lakes region to the next level. And as I was the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame videographer for 10 years, and then I traveled and went to New York and had a syndicated deal, and I did over 800 events in Miami, New York, LA, Toronto, Vancouver. I started analyzing what they were doing pertaining to the ecosystem in the arts, music, or what Sean is talking about, live performance. Cleveland used to have that over 25 years ago. That dissipated it, and they need to bring that back. Used to be a working artist city. That's gone. And I saw the beginning and the end. The Rock Hall supposed to start that and grew it, and never happened. So I think with Boris and Assembly and the culture and art, I think they can get that back, because what I realized, our community, oh my God, it's humongous. We just haven't maximized it or utilized it, the whole region. We just haven't figured it out. And I think I put the plan together. This is over 15 years of working on it. And I will basically premiere it in the next couple of weeks after I have a meeting with Boris. I'd just like to say that.
Thank you. Yeah, and I see some great suggestions for the holiday season. You know, promotion. We like we said, we're working with CAC on developing out the Cleveland arts events, but there's no stopping us from just including all of these great events that are happening in, you know, the for-profit field as well as the artist field, in addition to the nonprofits that are already regularly using it. And I think that it is already being used by a number of really great businesses, but we're here to help expand that and expand just the staff ability to maintain that site.
Valerie, could I chime in? I know I'm not on video. It's Jeremy.
Yes.
But I just want to echo what we heard from JT Thomas, and also what we heard from Sean about for-profits. There is growing galvanization of the live music field. I would encourage those who have an interest and want to participate, please sign up for the Cleveland Music Group on Facebook. We really have champions that include everyone from Lisa Klaus to Cindy Barber, Cindy Barber runs Speechland Ballroom. She recently represented Cleveland at a live music conference in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Of course, Cleveland did host the NEVA conference. NEVA is the National Independent Venues Association this past summer. And there's a growing movement to galvanize just within the music industry, all of these different various parts that are promoting the sector, not just across the city, but the county. And I guarantee that we're going to see more galvanization in 2023. Not just ARPA dollars, but other ways that the live music industry is going to be coming together so that we can promote our just the great environment. We just need to be more connected. So stay tuned.
Can I just quickly point out that 42% of our artists who received ARPA funding were musicians, and 30% of the businesses who received ARPA funds were music-related businesses and venues. So there is a huge network, and also 78% of the businesses who received ARPA had not previously received CARES funding. So there's a whole lot of artists, a whole lot of musicians, and a whole lot of music businesses out there who are ready to get involved.
Thanks, Meg. I should have known that, and I didn't. That's great.
Let me just add, it's a lifeline. The work that was done, the outreach, really, we kept we kept reiterating that the R in ARPA is rescue, and there are parts, especially in the arts community, that are still desperately in need of rescue. So even if some politicians have moved on and feel like ARPA is investment and there's still relief and rescue that needs to happen. And I appreciate what Assembly did, how quickly they were able to get the dollars out. And I guess, I dropped a bit of a bomb question in the chat about my understanding from talking to some folks close to CAC is that there still are dollars available for individual artists, not businesses, individual artists. And I just a question out there, if it's possible to get those dollars out to artists, given how quickly and how many people Assembly were able to reach who had not previously received funding, if that's something that Assembly and CAC are talking about.
I want to invite Jill. Jill, you're here and you've been so
Yeah.
quiet this whole time.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming.
Sure.
Feel free to jump
Sure.
in.
Yeah, no, that's a great and expected question. Yeah, we're working right now. In fact, Jake and Deidre and Jeremy and I were messaging just again this morning about plans to bring forward those recommendations at our December board meeting. So stay tuned. And I also just want to give a shout out to the great organizations through Karamu Spaces and Julita Burgos, who have distributed now successfully their money this year, or soon will be doing so soon. They have in the last couple of years been reaching a target of nearly 80% Black and Brown artists. And that's derived directly from the work of the Support for Artists Planning Committee and that pivot we made a couple of years ago that was done for and by artists and continues to be done that. So that is good. Jeremy, do you have more to add there?
It looks like he's
Well,
good.
well put. That's
Yeah.
good. Thank you very much. Well said.
Hey, Jeremy, can you tell us what went down with Montreal and what did you find out about their festival? As I was stating, Montreal took the Jazz Festival and made it the biggest event in the world. I think they have 3 million people within a 10-day or even more than that.
We're at time. I will be happy to share that at a future session.
Okay.
I will share that their level of government investment is just exponentially more than what we have in the United States. $70 million they commit to on the government side for festivals and music productions across the city. I'll happy to share that. That's worth a whole another conversation, but great
Okay.
point. With that, I think we're at time. I really appreciate, please keep those questions coming to us at info@assemblycle.org. We are advocating for all of you, especially individual artists and businesses and nonprofits. I hope you all have a wonderful, warm, and happy and safe holiday season. Thank you all very much. And thanks to our teams.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.